and we'll see how my internet does tonight. I was having some problems. I'm, historically known for bad internet on these shows, and one day I'll fix it. I'm sure it drives everybody crazy. But speaking of driving everybody crazy, what's up? Yours truly is in the house. Hi guys, welcome in MHI. We're gonna let this stream breathe one more second until we have all the check marks, and there they are. It's Wednesday night Broncos country, which means it's another edition of Mile High Insiders, holiday edition, if you will, the last MHI before Christmas. I am joined by a good friend of mine,
Thomas Hall. Looks like Luke froze up on us. Well, I guess I'll have to carry the show. We'll see. It's always a pleasure to join Luke on Mile High Insiders, and I've been on here a few times, so maybe some of you recognize me. But I also have a show called Legends of Mile High, which is on Friday mornings. So as we wait to get Luke back on here, we're going to do a little bit of discussion about Nathaniel Hackett. So Mike S. coming in. What's up, Broncos country? Thank you for jumping in there, Mike. Appreciate you coming in with the comment already. There's quite a few of us, quite a few people on here, so we'll hit them all. Todd, good evening, Broncos country. Dylan Scott and Mile High Insiders. Well, welcome to the show, Todd. Thanks for coming in. I think the answer is pretty straightforward here. He says, I don't think he can save his job at this point. Perhaps he could if he scapegoated all of his coaches outside of Evero. Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to jump into that, but I think there is, it's getting harder to tell whether or not he's going to be back or not. So as he starts to get the team to succeed on the field, like he has the last 2 weeks, I think it's possible that he is slowly saving his job, but that is a big if, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of questions still outstanding about Hackett and whether or not he is going to save his job. He would have to do something extraordinary, I think, towards the end of the season to really do that. But, you never know about owners and GMs, what their decisions will be. Jay Kozad coming in for me. There's nothing that would save his job, but Peyton and Penner will try and sell it. Yeah, they're going to have to sell it big time if that's their decision. Part of me thinks that the decision's already been made. I think, you get a little hints here and there, but not having Russell Wilson play, even though he had passed concussion protocol, when Nathaniel Hackett needs everything he can to save his job. They could have already made that decision, but you never know. There's always these last minute kind of turnarounds at the end, and you never know. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered with Nathaniel Hackett, really. And it all has to do with his leadership. We already saw that he couldn't really take care of the X's and O's part of this thing when he was calling stuff on the field. So game management, things like that, there was issues. But a general manager or a head coach, there's way more to a head coach than just X's and O's. So there's a few key leadership qualities that I think the ownership have to ask themselves: does Nathaniel Hackett possess these, or does he have the propensity to learn them all? And if there's so many of them that he has to learn, is it worth bringing back? First of all, the biggest question that everybody should be asking, especially the general manager and the ownership, is he able to build a competent staff? And from what we've seen, he is hit or miss on that. And someone mentioned Evero earlier. I can't remember who it was. That's a win right there. That's a great hire. He's going to be a head coach sometime soon, if not maybe next year. So he has the propensity to do it, but there's a lot of misses that he's had too. I think Uten and Stukes and Barry are all, those choices were pretty lackluster, I would think. And, unfortunately, he got rid of some really good coaches like Munchak that, he didn't feel the need to evaluate and keep them around. He wanted to bring his own people. So this is the coaching staff. Building a competent staff is all on him. So I don't think that he shows he can do it with a couple of them. Clint Kubiak, I think, is a pretty good hire. But that's a question that the ownership has to ask: is is he going to be able to identify some better coaches to come in and bring this team up to par? Like, I don't think I wasn't really happy with what Butch Berry did. I liked Stooks at first, and I think a lot of that special teams has to do with the fact that there's a lot of injuries and players are, they're playing multiple spots on special teams and on defense. So, once you start to dig down into your roster, it does kind of affect special teams. So, but I mean, the offensive coordinator hasn't done anything. From my he's not calling plays. Clint Kubiak's calling plays. What is it that the offensive coordinator provides? So that's one question I think you have to ask. And then, another quality of a good leader, especially on the football field, is to be able to evaluate your personnel enough to put them in positions to succeed, right? I mean, you have to be able to get the right people on the bus, but not only that, get them on the right seat on the bus. And that's from good to great. So a little good to great coming at you. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
What? I thought you could use some help.
Thank you.
I was like, let's bring in the lefty.
That's
the lefty
right.
Coming in coming in a little bit. I was like, I'll give Luke a couple of minutes, and if he can't do it I'll see if I can't help. Help Thomas out a little bit. But this is it's a good topic and listening, and what can he do to save his job? So many different things, and some of the things that you're talking about are things that we don't know he's already missed on.
That's right.
The building, the staff, and all those type of things. So I knew if I came in, Luke would show back up. I've been on for 10 seconds. I'm like, I know how to get Luke's internet back working again. I'll just pop on in. So Luke, hop on in when you're ready, and then we'll maybe talk for 30 seconds, and then we'll see how your internet's doing. And when you freeze up again, I'll bounce you, and I'll just take over.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate the save. It was right when I was talking about how historically bad the internet is. And then when you've got this polar vortex going on in the Mile High City with -50 wind chill, there's tomorrow. I guess I got sucked up in that polar vortex. I don't know.
Yeah, and you guys forgot to add the Facebook channels, so let me add those guys in real quick. We don't want to miss them. So
we're completely off the rails. See what happens when Nick
start today.
When Nick misses a show, man. I tell you what. I make him miss the show for sure.
Phil says I'm not getting notifications. Nobody did, Phil. Nobody got.
Sorry about that. We're all out of
technical difficulties. Phil, bear with us, brother. I know Phil's another one of our big MHH.
Double check that when they went live. Apologies, guys.
Yeah, he's one of our big super chat superstars. So thank you guys for bearing with us, and thank you, Scott. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate you boys always having my back here on MHH. And Scott, I will see you very soon, buddy, in January, Sin City. It's going down. Shrine Bowl, right? Can't forget that. But no, MHI, man, Thomas Hall, thank you so much for joining me. You're hosting your own show Friday mornings. You're writing articles, putting all kinds of great information out there for Broncos country to read, react to. But Broncos Rams, 2 4-10 squads going against each other. Baker Mayfield versus Russell Wilson, Christmas Day, Nickelodeon. First of all, what do you think of the Nickelodeon broadcasts before we get too into this? Because I don't buy it at all. I was always a Disney kid, so I always thought like Nickelodeon kids were a little odd in their own right. Let me know if I'm wrong. Maybe the Nickelodeon kids thought I was wrong. At least, hey, I'm claiming my stake to it, but I'm not down with it. My kid's not down with it. I don't know. Some people must love it because the network's making the decision to put Broncos Rams on Christmas Day on Nickelodeon.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good chance to try and get more kids involved, I guess. But I mean, football's so popular. I'm not sure why the gimmicks are out there, but whatever. I never really watched Nickelodeon, so I don't know. I don't really pay much attention. I typically turn the sound down when I'm watching football anyway to drown out the noise of the announcers and whatnot that kind of rub me the wrong way sometimes.
No, you're exactly right. How horrible is Mark Sanchez as an announcer? I mean, for the love of the good Lord, the Miami Dolphins calling Bradley Chubb Nick Chubb over and over. And then some of those jokes, absolutely crazy. What's not a joke? William Catalano coming in here saying Patrick Surtain named to the Pro Bowl. Is this some breaking news that William is breaking here on MHI because his internet's working, unlike mine?
That's awesome. I had not heard that yet, but I'm looking it up right now.
It's coming out there from DenverBroncos.com. Eric DeLalla, I'm sure, is on the case. And yep, like clockwork at 6 p.m. right when my internet crashed. That's what happened. PS2 broke the internet. He was named an official starter of the 2023 Pro Bowl. One Denver Bronco, definitely in for the Pro Bowl. Russell Wilson talked about it, was asked about it a little bit earlier today. What are your initial thoughts? And thank you, William, for breaking that news. Patrick Surtain II, you're number 2, making his first Pro Bowl.
Well, he's the only one that really deserves it, in my opinion. I mean, the Broncos have been bad. They've been good players, but their great players have really been injured, so they haven't done a whole lot to deserve it. So Surtain's been out there the entire time, playing at an elite level. I thought maybe since the popularity wasn't very high, he may miss out, but he's an all-pro. He definitely deserves to go to the Pro Bowl. I mean, there might be a couple others that could get the nod, but really it's just, he's the only one that deserves it, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's been a starter in all 14 games. He's had some learning lessons, if you will, specifically Davante Adams, one of the best, if not the best receivers in the league. A lot of his defactors, Patrick Surtain's defactors, will go to that game and say, no, he's not elite, not yet. Just like Davante Adams said, I beg to differ, just like you. I think that this young man is continually getting better. Playing cornerback in the league has got to be the hardest position to play. I know we talk about quarterback all the time because it's a quarterback-driven league, but I'm just thinking if I had a son and he wanted to play football and he's like, Dad, I'm playing cornerback, I literally don't know how to help you. I mean, that is one of the toughest positions in all of sports to play. There are some outstanding wide receivers, not only in this division, but that Pat Surtain has faced this year. So that's a super cool nod to PS2 and an early Christmas gift, if you will, for Broncos country.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it looked, like I said, it looked like we may not see any of the Broncos get voted into the Pro Bowl because, I mean, let's face it, they've been pretty bad. With all the hype, people are disappointed. I mean, there's a lot of apathy in Broncos country, so who knows who's voting or not voting for it. But, man, I mean, Surtain deserves it. He is one heck of a player. And, yeah, he got burnt a couple times, but, it's only his second year, for crying out loud. I mean, he's going to learn from that and just get better. So I'm pretty happy about that. I didn't think it was going to happen.
Now, when we talk about Christmas Day, Rams and Broncos in LA, obviously Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, that's a huge story, but we're talking Pat Surtain just making his Pro Bowl. Do you anticipate him covering Van Jefferson, or where do you think Pat Surtain should play? Because he's not one of those guys that I think Ejiro Evero wants to move all over the field. He's demonstrated that he can play him in multiple positions, and he's not a corner that spies just one receiver and locks onto them and follows them across the field. Do you anticipate Van Jefferson being the matchup there, or I'm not even going to try. Is it Brett Skowronek? If I say it fast, maybe I'll get it right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when they were getting burned by that rookie with the Colts, they ended up switching Surtain over to him. So I think he can do whatever you ask him on the field. So whoever, I mean, but I'll have to say, I mean, Mathis has really improved over the course of the year. So, I mean, they've got two corners that are no slouches, really. So I think it's a promising future in the secondary for the Broncos. But yeah, I mean, I think Surtain's going to, play the primary receiver probably against the Rams. I don't think there's a secondary threat that's worth, thinking, we should probably put, not move Surtain around. But, the nice thing about Evero is it's kind of unpredictable, what he does. So I think that's great.
Damari Mathis, a guy you had your eye on out at training camp this last year when we were out there sweating together. It feels weird to say that we were sweating in the dog days of training camp of July and all that. Yes. And now here I am getting sucked into a polar vortex in the Mile High City, -50, and snow is coming with the wind chill tomorrow. It was weird when I got the 9 News alert saying, this could affect life or death. I'm like, whoa, let's back it up just a skosh. Phil McLaughlin coming in now that we got Facebook up and running. Thank you for bearing with us, Phil. Evening, Thomas, Luke, and Deacon Scott. So do we think the feeling is now that we give Nathaniel Hackett another year? P.S. Congrats to PS2. Go Broncos. MHH for life. I'm getting that feeling, Phil. I really am. And I don't like it. Not at all. The argument can be made that Nathaniel Hackett deserves another year, and the argument can be made that he should be blown out right now. I think that it ultimately comes down to the pros and the cons and which ones are you willing to settle for. And I will give him this, and I will secede this. He keeps that locker room together, and there is no disputing that. I'll dispute certain facts with people all day online, but I'm not going to dispute that Nathaniel Hackett's got that locker room tight. I thought that the Mike Purcell thing, the spitting off with Russell Wilson in Carolina, would snowball into a defense versus offensive thing. That hasn't happened. So give credit where credit's due. Nathaniel Hackett, he's keeping this team together. But when I hear him talk at the press conferences, Thomas, he sounds like a guy that sounds safe right now. A few weeks ago, I mean, he was a little nervous, and he always has that faux pas. Again, Nathaniel Hackett's the nicest guy ever, but he speaks from the heart when he should just speak PR speak. And Patrick Smythe is probably pulling his hair out anytime coach gets up there. But he sounds like a guy that knows he's coming back, in my opinion. What say you, Nathaniel Hackett, year 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to trend that way. It really is. And as he's starting to, as wins are starting to come on the field, even though they haven't been, you got Arizona. That's not a great contest. They played pretty decent second half. The Chiefs start to get some wins rolling. I mean, that's what's important, is can this translate to the field? But man, my problem is he's got so many things that he just doesn't do right. Yes, I agree that he has the locker room. People want to follow him, but he's not good at making those big decisions that are more important to the team rather than the player. I mean, the Melvin Gordon fiasco all season long was terrible. And then you look at Albert O, and it's the complete opposite. He didn't give him a chance. He just shut him down right away. So, and then the fact that you've got to make sure that Russell Wilson is doing what he needs to do on the field. And that's a big personality that's going to be hard to control. And I think, yeah, they like him. The players like him, but can he make that big decision when it comes down to it? Being the really likable, kind of team friendly, player friendly type of guy. And that's where the ownership, like I was saying, while you're out, they have to ask themselves these questions. Can he learn to do that? And that's a big one for me. Can he learn to do that? And all these skills are teachable. They can learn all these leadership skills. Can he do it fast enough to be successful next year? And will the ownership actually give him that chance? Are they going to take that chance and say, let's give him one more year and see if he can do it? There's a lot to learn.
A lot to learn, and a lot of decisions that this ownership team has got to ultimately figure out. And you guys could reach out to Thomas at Thomas Hall NFL on Twitter. If you'd like to reach out to Scott, that's at Scout Kennedy, and yours truly at Luke Patterson LP. I posed a poll rather yesterday. Who's in charge of the Denver Broncos? George Payton, Nathaniel Hackett, Russell Wilson, or Greg Penner? And 42% of people are saying George Payton. So, okay, he's the GM, but ultimately it's the guy who signs the checks that gets that final call. I assume we all do that is Greg Penner. Yes, there is an ownership contingent, but Greg Penner is at the head of that contingent, and he's manning the ship, so to speak. Wins and losses matter, and Scott brought up a good point. He's like, they're just coming off of a win. You never know what's going to happen, right? Any given Sunday, if the Broncos try to put together 2 wins, that would be a Christmas miracle in its own right. But it's a win and loss results oriented business. And if he's keeping this team together, if they're playing inspired football, granted they lost to the Chiefs, and there is no such thing as a moral victory in my book. Russell Wilson played his best game. Jerry Jeudy played his best game of his entire career so far. So it makes you wonder about the potential. If you're playing devil's advocate, those wins and losses matter. Lawrence Rivera, thank you so much for all of the support. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Really appreciate everything that you do for us on our entire platform across MHH. And I want to give a shout out to Michaela Israel as well. Saw that she graduated with her bachelor's in psychology. Tom, you got to meet Michaela. You got to rap with her. Scott too, at the MHH meet and greet. I was breaking my arm on my Harley, so I didn't get to go out there. But a huge congratulations to one of our own, Michaela Israel, very good friend of the show. Congratulations and Merry Christmas.
Congratulations. Yeah, absolutely. Addison coming in with a super chat. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Off topic. Well, we're fine with off topic stuffs, but in my opinion, if Anthony Richardson is there when the Broncos are picking, they would be foolish to pass on him. I know O-line is a need, but he is legit. What do you think about that? You're going to be out there scouting these players.
Scott and I are both be on the circuit this year. So yeah, we're going to be heading out to Vegas soon. And then we've got the Senior Bowl down in his neck of the woods in the South. Quarterback, man, if you don't have one, you got to look for one at some point. But when you look at the room, right, I know we're going to talk about $250 million tied up with Russell Wilson. It is what it is. He is coming back in 2023. Wrap your head around that. George Paton, check. Russell Wilson, check. Ownership, check. Nathaniel Hackett, we're starting to make that check. It's not complete, but we're starting to fill that out. Russ is coming back. But the quarterback room as a whole has got to be improved. I like Brett Rippon. I don't love Brett Rippon. I think what he's done in his career has been very average. I think he's very respected on the team. I don't think he's a career journeyman like some of these guys you see last 12, 13 years, Josh McCown, Luke McCown, Ryan Fitzpatrick, if you will. We all wanted to say in his first or second year that he would be the next quarterback coach of this team. Maybe he becomes a coaching intern. You see how tough it is for coaches to be hired in the NFL, and Adam Schefter releasing a story, an interesting story about how much money has been spent or blown rather on coaches that have been fired within the last decade or so. Anthony Richardson, you got to look at him as a prospect at least, and you got to figure out if you're George Paton, what priority is quarterback going to be for you? It should be pretty high, considering you've got an aging quarterback that's not playing great. And the fact of the matter is quarterbacks don't play every single game in the season anymore, especially when they're adding games, Tom. So you got to rebuild the room, in my opinion, and that includes looking at all quarterback options.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have to take a swing at a quarterback. I don't think it's going to be high, though. I don't think they can afford to take a high round quarterback. Take somebody with some developmental skills later in the draft. They've got to address the offensive line if they want to succeed with Russell Wilson, and they have to. I know people have talked about how much cap, they could get around the cap if they do the X, Y, and Z and blah, blah, blah. That's not going to happen. You are going to see Russell Wilson playing quarterback for the Broncos for at least 3 seasons. At least you've got to address that offensive line, because that's what makes him a better quarterback. He can't, he holds the ball too long. It's just, you've got to. And Joe Brewer even says it.
Yeah. Could you imagine? And Joe was thinking it. Could you imagine if Russ was out there with that O-line last week, and who knows what the hell the O-line's going to look like this week? I mean, 5 sacks on Brett Rippon. Joe saw it, saying this needs to be an offensive line heavy draft and free agent offseason. You're absolutely right. It's got to be a combination of both, because Nick and I have talked about it on these airwaves. 4 out of 5 starters, maybe even 5. What if someone's calling about Garrett Bowles because they're willing to take a chance on an injury-prone player that's aging a little bit? What if they want to move Calvin Anderson over to the left tackle position? Something I've been lassie barking and chirping since training camp last summer. No, it's not my decision, but I'm kind of telling you things that I am hearing. I'm not going to say per source or anything like that, because that means you're talking to an agent. Colby Collier coming in, coaching. Offensive line, O-line. Butch Berry drives me absolutely nuts, Tom. We heard from a very reputable former NFL player and Super Bowl champion when we were out there at training camp that Butch Berry had immediate problems assimilating to this new offensive line coach role. And the product, certainly you can tell that on the field.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line, it's not just the coach. I mean, they have gone through tons of injuries. I mean, I don't want to make excuses. They didn't look great out of the gate, but they just never had a chance to gel. They had no preseason to speak of to kind of get to work together. So they came out of the gate in behind the 8 ball, so to speak. And then, they started having all these injuries. And I'll tell you, I think the only player that's safe on this line is Miners. The rest of them can be traded or sent back.
That's a bold take, and I'm a Quinn Miners guy, right? I like to say that I discovered him before everybody else, even though I didn't. I was down there at the Senior Bowl, but I just, I like to pop off and make people mad. Quinn Miners, the safest offensive lineman. Tell me more. Why do you feel that way?
Well, before I say that, I'm just going to say hi to Chris from Facebook. Thank you, Chris Hernandez. Great job, fellas. We appreciate it. Our
guy, a veteran. We appreciate your service, Chris. I'll always say that to Chris, man, and all you veterans out there. Thank you so much, and happy holidays, especially to our men and women in the military right now, especially abroad. I know sometimes that could be tough for families back at home, missing their loved ones. And thank you very much for your service, Chris. Absolutely love your support, brother.
back to the offensive line.
Quinn Miners, your
Quinn
bae.
Miners,
He's
yes.
safe. He ain't going nowhere.
I think he's safe. Well, he's still got a lot of upside, I think, and he's playing pretty good football. I mean, he has been.
But does he have two eyeballs? Does he have two eyeballs after that? I heard he had to go to a specialist afterwards.
That is a bummer.
Is he going to put a visor up, or that was just kind of weird, right? A weird injury last week. Quinn Miners got poked in the eye by some Cardinals defender, and it seemed like it looked bad. Like it looked like it hurt, and it wasn't one of those like Any Given Sunday. Do you remember that movie when there's like a player has like an eyeball and a retina on the field? It wasn't anything like that, but it was a weird injury.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I don't know about that. Hopefully he heals up from that. You got to remember though. Remember the Baltimore Ravens. What's his name? That got hit the eyeball with the flag from the ref. You remember that?
Was it Michael Orr?
No, it was before that. What it was?
Was it the
number 77?
The Hall of Famer left tackle, right?
I wasn't a Hall of Famer, but
okay.
He got hit in the eye with the flag. Was gone for a couple of years and then came back. So hopefully he can recover from that. Man, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Anyway, hopefully he recovers from that. And I've said this many times, and I've tweeted it out a couple of times. Why the heck aren't players wearing visors, clear visors in their face mask all the time? Is just beyond me. I don't know. But I think Quinn Miners is safe. I think he's, if he, obviously if the injury knocks him out and he retires or whatever, then that's different. But he's the only one, in my opinion, that has been consistently pretty good. And also, he's got still a lot of upside. I don't think Garrett Bowles is safe. I mean, I just don't. So,
what's up, Vic? Appreciate you joining MHI. He is Thomas Hall. I am Luke Patterson. Scott on the ones and twos, and it's just one of those things. Quinn Miners, man, I'm with it. I want to see Quinn get a third year here in Denver. I think that this offensive line coach, Butch Barry, is irresponsible. I think that the way that he goes about trying to deliver his message is clearly not being received well by players. And you start talking to some people around the team, not that work for the team or anything like that, but some people close to the team and have some real ears on what's going on at practice. Like, found out the other day they are doing 7-on-7 now at practice. They are doing some light one-on-ones with the O-line, D-line, and we didn't see that at all this last summer, and I think that's something that's really, really hurt the Denver Broncos. Clayton Heron coming in here saying, guys, good evening. Smash that like button and share. I tell you guys what, if they have the same game plan as the last game, we got that dub, baby. And that's going to be interesting because I know that the Rams are, 4-10. They're tied for last place in the NFC West, but they've got some guy named Sean McVay. Perhaps you've heard of him. Whiz kid extraordinaire. He's got everybody from his own coaching tree that derived from another coaching tree we know around here, all over the league. I mean, so I think that the Rams are definitely a better coached team than the Broncos. You don't know what you're going to get with the Denver Broncos. You don't know what you're going to get with Russell Wilson coming off of that concussion. He'll tell you he's feeling great. Flew in his own doctors, Tom. Surprise, surprise. He's got his own everything down there at the building. So, flew in his own doctors and then decided to go gambling up the hill. I know some people made a real fuss about that. Guy can't go on a date anymore with his wife, I guess, on Friday night playing a little blackjack. I think Russ can afford to do that, especially if he's not playing on Sunday. But no, man, we're talking Sean McVay, Nathaniel Hackett. I think McVay is definitely going to have his team very well prepared. And the Rams, the Broncos, they don't want to get embarrassed on Christmas. I mean, it's got to absolutely drive Sean McVay nuts talking about injuries. Look at some of the injuries that the Los Angeles Rams have sustained. And people are talking about Matthew Stafford. He might not come back, Thomas. That's some of the things we're talking about right now. And then you start hearing Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp popping off about Baker Mayfield. Is this an audition for Baker Mayfield to return to the Rams in 2023?
It's possible. I mean, the Rams are suffering too. I mean, it's been an injury-riddled year for both of them, but
they deserve it. A Super Bowl
I don't
hangover,
hate the Rams.
I
don't hate the Rams. I mean, I can't stand the division rivals or anybody that beat the Broncos in the Super Bowl. That's where I start, and then after that, my hate starts to go down a little bit. But I mean,
what do you think of the? Go ahead. My bad.
Oh no, go. What was your question?
I was gonna say, speaking of hate. What'd you think of the Raiders and the Patriots? Because I hate the Raiders and I love to see them suffer. But watching that play last week, I mean, what, Jacoby Myers? Like, bro, what are you doing? I'm surprised he hasn't been cut this week. Usually Bill Belichick is so, cutthroat. And, no pun intended. Yeah, in his old age, he's starting to get a little more docile. Bugs coming in. How do you think that Hackett could have another year? Well, this is how I could think that. I could think that he can make the strong case that ever since he gave up play calling duties to Gary Kubiak Jr., aka Clint Kubiak, obviously getting an audition as the play caller, that argument can be made the offense has been much more successful. Now, does that necessarily translate to scoring points? A little. The average didn't go up like leaps and bounds, but the production definitely has. You've seen players get utilized that otherwise wouldn't. I mean, Eric Tomlinson last week, I know it's Brett Rippon, and he's very good at making his reads on the field, but the commitment to the running game, that has to be something that he could definitely stack in for the win column if you're Nathaniel Hackett and you want to fight for your job, saying, look, I gave up play calling. I'm trying to focus as a whole on this team, and I wanted a heavy emphasis on the running game, something the Broncos are doing very well. I mean, Latavius Murray last week, an absolute beast, the guy I know that you love, I love. I don't know what his future is going to hold with this team long term. He's an aging back. You got Javonte Williams coming off of injury. We talk about the quarterback room turnover. Look at the running back room turnover. And speaking of running backs, Chase Edmonds was activated, Denver Broncos running back, off the injured reserve today as well. Do you think he'll play and make an impact, if at all, on Christmas Day?
He'll play. I don't know about an impact. I mean, if they're going to activate him, he's probably slotted to play. And, they need some backs. I mean, they're down to their last couple for sure. But I would like to say one thing, and I don't want to bring a downer on this, but
no, do it. That's what I do on this show. I bring this show down worse than the Broncos do, including my internet. So do it. Be a Debbie Downer, Tom.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, a running back of the past, Ronnie Hillman. Just keep him in your thoughts and prayers. It's a young man that's fighting for his life. So just
real talk,
keep him in your
man.
Prayers and thoughts, yeah. So you never know. He's in his 30s, so
he's my age, man. Yeah. I mean, he's my age, and for those of you that don't know, Ronnie Hillman not doing well, as Tom mentioned, in hospice care right now, fighting pneumonia, fighting some other health problems. I don't want to air his health problems out, but no, definitely, it's interesting when you start digging into Ronnie Hillman and you look at some of those leading backs during those Peyton Manning years. Ronnie Hillman was more involved than people think. Even listening to Peyton talk, Peyton Manning talks about Ronnie Hillman unsolicited, being a part of those teams, and he was a second round draft pick out of San Diego State. I know he didn't necessarily have a Pro Bowl career here with the Denver Broncos, but he's one of our own, and we're keeping him in our thoughts and prayers. Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, what's this about Quinn Miners? What is the cost saving on Bowles? I don't know the numbers on Bowles, but you know that he's locked it down to a decent contract. I don't think he's hamstringing the Broncos by that number. But you've got to improve and figure out what type of offensive line you want. What type of offense does this team want? I mean, they got rid of Mike Munchak because of the scheme, right? It doesn't fit the scheme. I could give a rip about the scheme because the Broncos scheme, their identity, it's always in flux. It changes game to game. It makes me worry now that Russell Wilson is coming back from a concussion. Is he going to try to air it out and throw in the pocket? Or is he going to still try to move and show that he's mobile? Is he going to see any ghosts out there? I'm not certainly one to question Russell Wilson's courage or anything like that, because I definitely thought he made the right call going for it against the Kansas City Chiefs 2 weeks ago. We would have ripped him to shreds if he didn't. So I hope he plays smart, and I hope he plays aggressive. Yeah,
he needs to slide. He still could have got that, move the chains on a slide on that. He dove head first. I mean, I appreciate the competitive spirit and going for it. But we got to be smart. You got to be smart as a quarterback. They protect the quarterbacks like crazy. Don't do something dumb to make it even worse. So, I don't know. I think he'll probably, he's feeling he wanted to get back there. I think he's going to be ready to roll. I think he's excited about playing again, proving that that wasn't one game fluke. And but I hope they stick with the running game.
They got to stick with the running game and running the table. 18 million cap hit. Scott, thank you for doing that research against Garrett Bowles next year, man. That's a whole lot of money, to quote Antonio Brown, dude. That's tough. But it's doable in the age 2023. You've got tough decisions to make as an organization, who you're going to commit your money to, because we know that it's Russell Wilson. That's the first and foremost. We know that Greg Penner shut it down around the UK trip against the Jags. And when you look at it, Thomas, I know that this team is doing better. It could be argued they had a moral victory against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. They had an actual victory against the Cardinals last week. This team is 1-6 on the road. All right. And they have a losing record at home at 3-4. This is a bad football team, folks. So while we're trying to find, some silver linings to hang our hat on, this is tough. But I will say this, it would have been so easy for this damn football team to shut it down. 1, 2, 3, Cabo. I mean, that's what I've expected, and I'm not seeing it. And that is a welcome surprise. That is something I'm thankful for, because some of these games this year, Tom, I mean, you see it too. You watch the replays, you chart and everything else, man. It's rough for Broncos country, and the caffeine and the alcohol sometimes needed to be around just to stimulate a response out of Broncos country, try to get a pulse. But Trevor, we see you in the comment section. Thank you so much. Trevor Sandell saying, good evening, fellas in Broncos country. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thank you for joining MHI with Scott, Thomas, and yours truly.
So I just want to touch on one thing when we were talking about Russell Wilson, that's competitive spirit. So I don't want to change it up too much, but we were talking about Hackett. And one thing that I think is important for head coach, and I think he lacks, or at least he seems to, is that competitive spirit. When he was up on the podium talking about the rivalry with the Raiders and the really kind of dismissing it, and then he was talking about how the win streak didn't matter, against them versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know if Pat Bowlen if he was the owner, would have liked that too much. And I don't know if the owners like it. I know the fans hated it, but maybe it's just coach talk. Maybe it's just, his way of doing things. But I think that's an important piece to a head coach, is that competitive fire. You don't have to be out there yelling at people and acting, all fiery all the time, but you got to have that little bit of competitive nature about you, that you cannot stand to lose, and you hate anything that shows that you have been losing. And I didn't see that. I don't know what your take is on that, but that bothered me. That really did. And I want him to have a little bit more fire when it comes to those rivalries and things like that.
Paul coming in here agreeing with you 1,000%, and Bama X too saying missing that edge. You're exactly right, and I would use a synonym rather instead of competitiveness. How about killer instinct? Where's that killer instinct from this man? Mark Schlereth, a guy you and I both love and respect. Who the hell doesn't, right? Unless you're a Jets fan. But it's one of these things where he says it over and over. There's a fine line between liking your head coach and respecting your head coach. And I'm not advocating for a head coach to come in, just like you said, they don't need to rule with an iron fist and be, such an ass that the team can't move forward. But you've got to have some sort of accountability, and you can't just say that word into the microphone and expect that it's going to happen. That's what we're seeing at UC Health Training Center. You're seeing Melvin Gordon pout and do all his antics and pop off on Twitter, everything else, and you double down and say, yeah, he's my starter. I believe in him. What kind of message are you sending? The same argument can be made with Russell Wilson right now, playing this week, just after clearing concussion protocols a week ago. And yeah, they held him out a week just for safety. But if we're talking about safety, Brett Rippon got his ass kicked against the Cardinals, and you're going to throw Russell Wilson out there on Christmas Day? Is that about safety, or is his safety a little bit different than other players? Defensive linemen, they don't get talked about enough. DJ Jones, he knocked around a little bit with a concussion. Didn't hear a peep about that. Linebackers, Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, they're making tons of tackles and stuff out there. I mean, different rules for different players, sure. But when you don't have that accountability, you don't have the wins right now, you need to start taking some of this stuff away. And I wrote about it at milehighhuddle.com. It got all kinds of hate, or whatever you want to call it, 2 weeks ago. But the private quarterback coach, you got to go. The private doctor, you got to go. The office, you got to go. Because it's not helping them win football games today. It might have helped win some football games in Seattle, and that's a whole nother argument. But that's the past. This is now. Russell Wilson is leading a 4-10 football team on Christmas Day. This was supposed to be a game that you circled on your calendar, a game that I was looking forward to watching with my family and loved ones. Now, I mean, Broncos country, they're just hoping Russ makes it out alive, Tom, in LA. I mean, that's where we're at. Yeah. So I've got huge problems, not only with Russell Wilson, but with Nathaniel Hackett's leadership style, because as the head coach, you're supposed to be the CEO of this team.
Yeah, and that comes down to making the tough decisions, like I said earlier. He's not making them. I mean, you can be well liked and you can be followed, but sometimes you have to make the tough decision. And those are some of those reeling. If Hackett does get another year and somehow fixes the whole thing with Russell Wilson, so to speak, that would be huge.
And boom, John coming in right here. This is perfect. If Russ doesn't want to change, the owner should force his hand. Who is going to force Russell's hand? That's the question, John, because John's right. I mean, it's the guy signing the check and gals that ultimately get that say. But we're under the impression, I shouldn't speak for you, I'm under the impression that Russell Wilson was promised the keys to the building and anything he wanted, with good reason, right? Probably. The expectations to win. Here you go, Russ, whatever you want. Well, that contract has been signed. He's locked in. What's he going to do? Quit? Is he going to retire if you tell him Jake Heaps isn't allowed at the building? And I don't even know Jake Heaps. Nothing's personal. This is football, by the way. And if you want to know what's going on, I see the comments in there. Look, this is professional football. Have a thick skin. If you don't like it, move along. That's one of the deals. You're a $250 million quarterback, and you need to be held to the flame a little bit, Russ. How are you going to personally change? Because every week I hear him talk about Team 3. He can call them his guys or his team or whatever the hell he calls them. What about the Broncos guys? I thought you were supposed to be one of those guys. How relatable is Russell Wilson to not only the coaches, but to his teammates? So, yeah, should someone force his hand, John? Absolutely. And if that means it needs to be the owners, Greg Penner, I know you don't know a lot about football, but you know a lot about business and you know a lot about what you're spending on this, man. Do it.
Yeah. I have less care for what Russell Wilson does off the field and his antics or whatever. My problem is with Hackett.
Wait. It doesn't bother you a little when he's losing?
Losing bothers me like crazy.
No. I know, but he's going to be showing up on Christmas. I can already see it on Nickelodeon, right? He's going to be walking. He's going to be dressed to the nines. I mean, the guy has style, you can't deny him that, but he's going to be tweeting out pictures or videos of him rolling in there with the shades. And, I feel like so much it's just overdone at times. If you're winning, sure. But it bothers me off the field now. And you're right, Tom. It shouldn't. I shouldn't care as a football analyst what Russell Wilson's doing on Friday night in Blackhawk, Colorado, playing, blackjack. But it does bother me when it's like, well, he's coming off of a concussion. He's talking about waking up in the middle of the night, flying his own doctors in. If you have a concussion, you should probably stay away from loud noises and lights and things like that. Maybe not go to the casino. So I got to push back just a skosh because at times it feels like it's a little much. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's got a persona. And I mean, that's the way it is. He's a celebrity, man. Celebrities don't live in the real world. It's just the way it is. I mean, they have to have a persona. But the problem I have is he wanted to be something on the football field that he wasn't, and Hackett let him do it. And a good leader, regardless of how much money somebody's being paid, puts their players in the right position. Regardless, they do what's right for them. They do the right thing for them, even when that player or person in a business or whatever doesn't know what's the right thing. Russ wanted to be a pocket passer, it seems. That wasn't the right thing to do, and Hackett needed to do what was right for the team and say, this is not how we're going to run this offense. And that's the problem I have. If Russell Wilson's won 10 games this year, nobody would give a crap about what his antics are off the field. Maybe to drum up some sort of nonsense that they can get clicks on, but
TMZ Russ, like our guy just said earlier. But I mean, like, you're right. You called him a celebrity. He's asking for it. You're asking for it, and last I checked here in the Mile High City, I don't see too many 3 jerseys. I don't see any Team 3 stuff. I mean, no, that's like the worst marketing gig ever, at least this time of year. Kayla weighing in here real quick. I wanted to be sure to read this comment because it's important to have these debates. It's important to disagree. And if you guys, want to call us out and let's debate it. So Kayla weighing in here on MHI saying she doesn't really think that it matters that Russell Wilson has his own team that's paid by him, as long as he's not making the decisions for the Broncos. That's petty stuff. Here's where I think it's a problem. And the pushback I get immediately is, how many other quarterbacks have private quarterback coaches in the NFL? A lot of them do. Sure. How many of them have keys to the building like Jake Heaps and Russell Wilson? How many of them have independent doctors that have to coordinate medical records and prognosis with Russell Wilson? I mean, these things are a little odd when they're not producing winning results. You have to at least ask the question. Is it the reason? No, it's not the reason, but it's a variable. Nick's a scientist. I love you, Nick. I miss you. Merry Christmas. I'm throwing variables out there. If I had a graph, I would show it. But you have to get the variables out there and ask some of these questions, because it's not all on Russ. It's not all on Hackett. This is a collection of bad decisions. So when Broncos country's like, really? Nathaniel Hackett should come back for year number 2? I mean, I got to roll with them. And I've told Nick this too. George, I love George Payton, the scout. Absolutely love him. You had to make that deal for Russell Wilson, in my opinion. I'm not going to go back and say it was a horrible deal. This year's bad. Russell Wilson is playing bad. I do not think he's washed up. But George Payton, if you bring Nathaniel Hackett back for 2023, you are married to Nathaniel Hackett, and your job goes as Nathaniel Hackett jobs goes.
I would just like to add one thing that I've asked myself, and I want your take on it. Had Russell Wilson gone to New England, what would New England be doing right now? I bet they would be in the playoffs already.
No way. And I'll push back on that because Josh isn't there. Matt Patricia, I mean, they didn't even have an offensive coordinator, man. They didn't even name one really up until right before the season or mid-season. I see your point, because they bend to their quarterback's will, right? They don't try to jam a system on them. They bend to the system, but you're seeing that. I like Mac Jones. Call me crazy. I liked him since the Senior Bowl. I don't think he's a bust or anything like that, but man, Russell Wilson, immediate success with New England. That's a tough one for me to go there. Is that a Bill Belichick thing, a philosophical thing? What makes you think that?
I think because it's lacking what Hackett is able to do, and Belichick can. He knows how to make players do what they are supposed to do on the field, right? Like, he puts them in position to succeed. Yeah, they're not doing great. They don't have a great team around them. They have a terrible offensive coordinator, but history, we could be talking about Belichick or some other good coach. I'm just saying him as an example. Right. He would be the one that says, listen, Russ, this is not working. We're not going to put this offense on you. We're going to run this. It's going to benefit you, and we're going to go out and win games. And that, in my opinion, would be what made that team a success. I think it was the opposite that happened here. Russ wanted something. Hackett let him do it. Then they realized it's the wrong thing, and now it's too late, right? He wasn't able to evaluate that situation and make the right decision. And Russ couldn't get out of his own way, right? He didn't realize that wasn't the right thing. And that's what a good leader does. It takes the players or people that work for you or whatever, and they are able to show them the right way of doing things, even if that's not the right way in that person's mind. So
yeah, and they're comfortable doing it. They're comfortable having that uncomfortability, if you will.
Yep, absolutely. They're comfortable making the tough decisions, right? And when you're a player's coach, it's a lot harder to make those tough decisions on a player who wants something so bad. Like, it seems like Russell Wilson wanted to come in and run this offense. I mean, they both got together and kind of schemed it up. But sometimes the tough decision is to say, this isn't the right way. This isn't right for you. Whether you like it or not, this other thing over here is the right thing, and we're going to win games because of it, or we're going to, be successful in a business or whatever. You got good leaders able to do that. They don't have to be a hard ass, right? They don't have to be a jerk. They just have to be able to put it in the right way so that they understand and they buy in. Hackett didn't even try to do that, in my opinion.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I see where you're coming from now, because with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, you always know where you stand, period. End of story. You don't got to worry about like Jerry Jones down there who's thinking about it in the shower and then who's been thinking about Odell Beckham Jr. for 2 months now and, then goes out and signs TYL. No, you know where you stand with these guys, just like John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, I imagine. Ozzie Newsome, I know he's still involved with Baltimore. He's not calling the shots, but you knew where you stood with the Harbaughs, the Ravens, these organizations that have identity and have that keyword of accountability. Are you willing to have that hard conversation with Russ? Can you call Russell Wilson out in the meeting? Because that's not a Russell Wilson problem. That's a leadership thing. I mean, right. John Elway would get just completely eviscerated by Alex Gibbs in some of those team meetings based off of what we've read in books and heard from other players. And Elway would not only embrace it, but Mike Shanahan allowed it. He encouraged it. And he's like, look, you know where you stand with me, period. And if it's my job or yours, that's your job every time. I'm not getting fired because of this. And if I've got to motivate you so much that I am the bad guy or whatever you want to say, then that's not a bad thing either. I mean, Mark Schlereth and those guys loved Alex Gibbs, God rest his soul, because they banded up because he was a villain at first. They're like, this little guy's crazy, but he scares all of us to death. And, then, when you love your coach, when you're at the podium, getting 2 Super Bowls, when you're celebrating with your families, getting dinner with those Super Bowl rings, then you love your coach. Todd Ostendorf coming in here, talking about that Frankenstein offense. I absolutely love it because it is kind of patched together like a Frankenstein offense, talking about how it's got some similarities between the Packers offense and what Aaron likes, and then some stuff with Russ in Seattle. And it ultimately kind of comes down to, and Nick not being here, he's going to love us talking some Seattle Seahawks, right? Because he loves those dirty birds. We can't stand them. None of us can. Nope. Running the football. Man, Russ was good when they ran the football, right? And the Legion of Boom, great defense. Still not better than the Super Bowl 50 defense. That's just facts. But running the football, that's something, a narrative that I've picked up on. Russ didn't want to run the football. He wanted to be this big time passer from the pocket. He wanted to reinvent himself, if you will. He wanted to have some career longevity. He wants to be the best of all times, talking about winning like LeBron, right? Not 1, not 2, not 3. And well, we're 4-10 here, Russ. Okay. So I get it, but he doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. And you talked about accountability. I mean, do you really think Russell Wilson wants to embrace this running game? Because I would think if you have any sort of ability to want to preserve yourself in your career, especially against the Rams, the next team, then you would need to run the football. He talked about how great Latavius Murray was for 20 minutes into the microphone, right? He's a walking cliche. But do you really want Latavius toting that rock, Russ? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but he better. I mean, if he wants, that's like what I'm saying. You got to be able to tell some of these people sometimes, to tell people that you care about, that, you got to get out of your own way.
You're screwing
sometimes.
Up.
Yeah, you've got to. And Hackett needs to say, we are running this football because it's going to win games, and you're going to be there while we win it. And you're going to contribute in a great way as the quarterback, but you don't have to win it all yourself, and you shouldn't. I mean, I don't know how he needs to put it, but he's got to put it in a way that everybody kind of buys in. And that's why everybody bought into Alex Gibbs. He was able to teach them the right way to do it. And then they saw the results on the field, and then they won Super Bowls, but they had bought in way before it. Maybe they didn't like him at first, but they bought into that scheme from the beginning, and they went out and they made history. They made history with that offensive line. So I think
with a guy that you're campaigning hard for the Hall, this is a good time to give that plug, right? Sure. You go ahead and give your Tom Nalen plug real quick here, Tom.
Yes, Tom Nalen, Hall of Famer in my book. He does not get enough recognition. So people, mention Tom Nalen, and you're out on social media, you're talking to people. Let's get Tom Nalen to the Hall of Fame, man. He deserves it. And I can go on. I mean, we'd be here for another hour if I kept talking about all the reasons he should be in the Hall of Fame. But I'll tell you what, I have some buddies that not in the Hall of Fame. I wasn't able to join the podcast. I always go on and I talk about Tom Nalen. I talked about him for about 2 years ago when I first went on that. They put him into their final 15, even though he's not even in the running now, because they realized, yeah, he deserves it. And that's what it takes. So Tom Nalen.
Yeah, Tom Nalen for sure. And that hoodie, I thought maybe you'd be wearing the hoodie too, man. And huge
I've
prop.
worn,
Shout
it
out
too many times.
well, and a shout out to you too, man. Those proceeds went to a good cause. So, good. You're a good man, Tom. Way good man. You're a good man and good spirit. You know why Tom Nalen's not in the Hall of Fame? I'm going to ask you this and say the same answer because he doesn't want to be, because he hates himself so damn much. No, I love Tom Nalen. I've got to meet him a couple times. He's a good dude. He revolutionized that center position in my mind. He made a quantum leap in the game at that position and the way that it's being played today. We're getting some comments. This has turned into a Raw's Heat podcast. It's wild. You never know what's going to happen here at MHI. I'm joined with Thomas Hall. He is the host of the Legends of Mile High podcast. Every Friday morning, Thomas will kick off your football Friday. We've got a huge weekend, not just the holidays, but some decent football games coming up here on Saturday. Tom, I assume you're going to be on Friday, because we don't stop here at MHH, man. We're going to keep shows going. I know some guys, some gals are taking some vacation, including Nick, and big Merry Christmas to Nick and thank him for everything that he's done. But yeah, it's odd right here. If Hackett had the cojones, he would call some folks out. And that's a tough one to navigate, because he hasn't thrown anyone under the bus, but it's hard to call people out when you're not calling people, like when you don't have some of that hair on your chest because you're not following your own rules. And you're exactly right. Your best friend isn't going to tell you everything you want to hear. You're the greatest, Tom. You have nothing that you need to improve on.
Right.
No, your best friend's going to give it to you straight and say, look, man, I love you, but Tom Nalen doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I'm just joking. It's just one of those things, man, where, you've got to be real. You've got to keep it real. I always think of that Dave Chappelle skit, when keeping it real goes wrong.
Well, Luke, it looks like you lost internet again. So it's back to me trying to carry the show. Luckily, we're almost done. But I will say a few last kind of words about Hackett. And it's not about calling anybody out. It's not about going up to the podium and saying somebody did something wrong. It's doing it with the team. You don't have to do it in public. You shouldn't do it in public. But he does need to get a handle on some of this stuff. And I don't know if he can. And I remember when Shanahan came back to coach the Denver Broncos, he and John Elway used to be great friends when he was offensive coordinator. They used to go golfing together. They used to do all sorts of things together. And when he came back, he flat out told John Elway, he said, we're not going to be friends. We can't be friends. All of the stuff that we used to do when I was offensive coordinator, we're not doing, because I'm going to have to give you tough love or whatever it may be. So he knew from the beginning that the friendship with the players isn't going to work. You can be nice to them and you can have a relationship, but you can't be buddy and then expect them to take your advice and your, calling people out and then being okay with it. It just doesn't happen. I mean, so that's part of the problem. I think, man, the more I talk about it, the more I think Hackett's going to get another year. And I was dead set against it from the beginning. After about 4 or 5 games in, I was like, this is it. We're done. We're not going to see Hackett again. But man, they may just bring him back. And there's a few reasons for it. And I'll just kind of, finalize the show with a few things. There's a few reasons why they're going to, if they do it, and why they will. One, if he wins consistently going out to end this season, I know it's over. There's no hope for the playoffs. There's nothing. But if he can get 2 out of the last 3 games as win, that's going to give them a chance to reevaluate what he was doing. 2, I think he knows his weaknesses and is able to change. We saw that happening right away. He knew that his game management skills needed some help. He brought someone in to do it. He realized that he could not, and it took him a while to do it, but he did finally realize that his play calling wasn't up to snuff. And he had the wherewithal to take and give it to Clint Kubiak instead of Uten. So those are 2 things that I think that they're gonna look at and bring him back. But I don't know if Luke's coming back. I think we're just gonna have to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining. I appreciate that he had me on the show. So take care. Have a Merry Christmas, everyone.